Good afternoon again. This is Arif Qureshi, Managing Principal at ICS, and thank you for joining our COVID Convo, Engage with Local Superintendents on COVID-19. I'm really excited about the fact that we're able to continue this, I think, important conversation around the challenges that most schools districts are facing around not just COVID, but how do you manage the educational aspects of your goals that you have in place. So again, thank you for joining us. I do want to spend a little bit of time, first of all, to give a little bit of a shout out to Erin Sorensen, who's our Director of Marketing, and their entire team. It's exciting that we're going to continue this through October, but I know it's a lot of work for her. She's got about, I think, close to 15 referendums she's working on for a number of school districts, along with a bunch of indoor air quality projects. So again, Erin and her team, thank you for taking the time. I know it's not easy. When I mentioned this to you, I said this will be just an additional add-on to your job scope. So again, thank you for pulling this together. I think it's an important service to a lot of school districts who want to know, I think, what's going on and what some of the options are. So a few other things I do want to mention is you will see that as the superintendents talk about the current situation, you'll see the challenges they're dealing with. And I think it kind of reminds me of a quote from, I think it was Robert Burnham Jr., who wrote the book on, I think it was the Celestial Handbook. And he made the comment that, for most people, facts change their reality. For some, facts are irrelevant. And I'm hoping that as you listen to all the superintendents and you see the data changing in your own community, in the county, that the right steps are being taken and we take this issue seriously. Fred, of course, will give you a little bit of an update in terms of what's happening around SF10 regarding holding the districts harmless. We'll provide, of course, an update from each of the school districts. And again, thank you for the school districts who are dedicating a lot of time to pull this together. I think one of the things you will hear today is some of the emotional issues and the challenges that a lot of people are facing and what they're doing and some of the neat stuff that they have pulled together to help out in that area. Jeremy Kovash will give you a quick update in terms of service co-op and how the regional support is going. And again, we're happy to have both Neil Carlson and Todd Rapp to close it out and provide some additional information on the public health side, and then a quick update on communication. And then we'll open it up for question and answers. So with that, let me pass it on to Fred.
Thank you, Arif. And the first thing I'd say, superintendents, is take that invite you got for today and forward it to a colleague and tell them just jump on. And the information today is rich. We went through it just 20 minutes ago. And these districts are facing increasing numbers and dealing with mental health issues. I think it's really going to be valuable. If you've not seen the article in the Strib this morning on the Sibley East, and they wanted to open in person and their numbers only allow hybrid, the department got pretty tough with them, I understand. And there's a limit to how far you can push past the county numbers. And so I'd read that. They quoted Jim Amstead, the superintendent. I know him. I'm sure it was a heck of a week for him. And so that'd be a good quick read this evening when you get home online. Also in the call yesterday, kind of disappointing news on the 15-day enrollment drop. The waiver this year is only going to be for those children that are too ill for distance learning. And so you're really going to have to keep close tabs on your enrollment, make sure you're reaching out to ones that have a sequence of absent days and keep them enrolled or re-enroll them even if they've been past the 15 days. Also, MDH is going to have a list of schools with COVID cases in the school. These are students or staff who tested positive, if there are 5 or more, who actually were in the building. And so at 2 p.m. today, they'll have a press conference on that, and that will be out. If you're one of the districts that are listed, you would have gotten a call already. Finally, with a series of special sessions, every special session, the bills all have to be reintroduced. And so Senator Utke introduced in the 4th special session in September a bill to hold districts harmless for enrollment. It covered quite a few funding streams. There's a link to it, and there's also a little link to an article by Sam Walseth from MREA. But I would contact your legislators next week, because you've been in school for a month, you know what your enrollment melt is. Now you see the concerns of the 15-day drop. And ask him to reintroduce that, ask people to sign on. Talk to legislators both in the House and Senate of both parties, because this is going to be an important issue and it doesn't have to wait till January. This is something that could be addressed in a special session. Well, with that update, let's hear from Andy Almos in East Central.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks again for joining us on another Friday. Welcome to October. We were talking about this before the meeting that for superintendents and principals and probably teaching staff, it feels like it should probably be somewhere around January right now with everything that's gone on in the first month of school. So congratulations on making it to October, but we have a long way to go, don't we? The situation update for East Central right now, our current case rate number is 41.54 per 10,000. And that number is quite high and growing. And so we have some big concerns and a lot of conversations taking place with public health. As I've mentioned on other calls, we have this ongoing issue with our federal prison and the number of cases with that prison located in our school district. If you remove the prison numbers, we're at 12.03. So we have a communication issue that continually is with us to make sure we explain that to our community and what that number really means, because if you take it at face value, we have a few people panicking and saying, whoa, holy moly, we need to look at that. And the numbers are high and the numbers are growing. As we look at next week's prediction, public health, of course, doesn't have complete data yet, but what they're telling us is the number will be no less than 56.36 per 10,000. So again, that can cause some people to panic. So we're starting that communication all over again. What does this mean? Our case rate number is on a little bit of a collision course, because pretty soon those cases from the federal prison are going to drop off. When those cases drop off, they expect our number to be somewhere in over 20 still, because the community spread numbers are growing too. So again, we have explaining to do. Make sure we communicate well with what our plans are. This week we switched to the high school hybrid learning model. Start with the positive. I would say it's already going way better than it did last spring. We were more prepared. We got ahead of our distance learning issues. We have all of our 100 and some hotspots out to families, and they seem to be working for the most part. So far, as of today, things seem to be going rather smooth in the high school. But again, now is the time to make sure we go back, review our plans, what's working, what's not, make sure that what we have on our website is the most up-to-date information. Our frequently asked questions still needs to be updated so we can go back and add those things. Just what we did here when we made the transition was we gave our high school staff two days to plan. And I have to tell you, that went over really, really well with our staff, because it was a little time for them to breathe, some time to stop and say, are we ready for this, and to work the bugs out. And I think that's contributing to how positive a start it's been in the new model. A few things we really had to work through quickly. Lunchroom seating. Our students were all eating lunch in the lunchroom, because we have a rather large lunchroom. We had the space. Well, now when we go to a more restrictive model, we need to make sure we have those distancing. So we actually took other spaces, breakout areas, some pretty wide corridors, and expanded our lunchroom. We have big glass walls that face our lunchroom, so it actually looks like one continuous lunchroom, but we moved some old desks and spaced them apart. We've gone to one-way hallways and stairwells in the high school. That's pretty entertaining to watch the kids get used to that, with arrows on the floor. Watch the kids correct the staff members as we do one-way traffic. Hopefully that helps. I do know that that's been a popular decision for our staff members too, while they try to maintain distancing and remind kids they know where everybody's headed. Our high school principal and her staff are working through a virtual homecoming activity right now. We've had to cancel homecoming. We've had to add football and volleyball back. And now we're back to what are we going to do for homecoming, and some virtual coordination and things like that. And I'm sure most school districts are working through those discussions right now. With our elementary school, with the numbers the way they are, we are quickly planning for a likely transition to the hybrid model coming up quite quickly. With pending MEA and that MEA break that districts normally get, or fall break, whatever you choose to call it, You know, that's right around the corner. The question is, can we make it to fall break, to MEA, before we make this transition? With our numbers climbing the way they are, we're still in that working with public health to try to figure out the best decision to make there. But no later than early next week, we'll have that on our mind. As we talk about mental health and supporting our students and our staff, I think the overarching discussion I think we have to have as a staff is empathy. Every single person is addressing this particular pandemic differently. It affects people differently, all the way down to preschoolers, all the way up through our PSEO kids. And some people really believe that this thing is a hoax, and some people are really absolutely scared. And so we have to meet people where they are and try to help them through one way or the other. If it's the people that think it's a hoax, we have to remind them that we're still required to do these things. If it's the people that are scared, we have to try to step them through, give them frequent breaks, try to help them as best we can. But overwhelmingly, we have to meet them where they are and show them some empathy. We were a school that took on this trauma-informed care idea a number of years ago, and we have found that this is really coming in handy as we work our way through a pandemic. Our high school staff attended the National Trauma-Informed Schools Conference quite a few years ago, with the idea, it was a train the trainer model, and to come back and to train every staff member on what it means to be trauma informed and to work with students coming into our school system with trauma. Not only our students, but our staff members. Many of our staff members have a background with trauma. And what does that mean for us? And it's drastically changed the game with how we show empathy to our students and our staff. So I strongly encourage districts that haven't looked at some of that trauma-informed practices, give it a look. It's really interesting, and it's a game changer for how your staff interacts with kids. We have 2 different mental health organizations that occupy offices within our school system. And in total, we have 3.0 FTE of school-linked mental health providers on site. That has been a very valuable resource for us to make sure that our kids get the mental health supports that they need. And those organizations have shifted to telehealth, of course, like everybody has last spring all the way through this year. And there was some growing pains with that. You know, can you really provide mental health counseling to kids on Zoom? And the answer is yes, and it's working quite well. One of those organizations also provides on-site 1 day per week mental health therapy and support for our staff members. I think I mentioned this a few COVID convos ago, but staff members on their prep hour can stop down and see their therapist. They can spend their prep hour once a week and sit with them and you know, have their tune-up for the week. And that has really proved to be a great thing for our staff. We don't have a ton of staff members taking advantage of it, but it seems like every week that goes by in this pandemic, we get more and more questions about that. So we're really fortunate to have developed those partnerships and put those things in place. In the grand scheme of social emotional learning in our school district, a few years ago, we implemented a tiered approach to this. We worked really closely with our local special ed cooperative, the St. Croix River Education District, and they've really expanded their service and partnership to all of the SCRED schools through social emotional learning. In fact, we have a social emotional learning coordinator for all of the schools to come in and to help implement these things. But really, we're back to this tiered approach. And so our tier 1 kids, and all kids grades K through 8 receive SEL lessons on a daily basis. So in the elementary school, we're implementing those SEL standards, putting them right into everyday lessons, right into how we talk about friendships, all the way through how do we do self-care? What do we do to take care of ourselves? And every kid gets those in grades K through 8. Now, as we know about RTI, if you go back one there, Aaron, as we know about RTI, of course, that's as we look at all kids, that's going to help, but there's going to be some kids that need more. And so there's a growing list of kids that are connected very closely with somebody in the school for check and connect sessions. These might be the kids that they're not to the level of needing therapy, but they need a trusted adult they can go to and talk through what's going on at home or at school or with friends, whatever it might be. So there's a growing number of kids that are scheduled for check and connect with our school counselor, social worker, those kind of people. And then there's a very smaller group of kids that absolutely need a mental health therapist because they have a mental health diagnosis. And so we have this tiered system in place. Of course, it's not perfect. We're all in this mode of growing our social emotional interventions, but so far things seem to be going quite well, and we want to make sure we continue to support our students and our staff. So what's happening right now? There's a lot going on, like there is in every school district. What do we need to talk about and plan for? And as I mentioned before, this potential shift in the elementary school for hybrid. Right after this meeting, our elementary staff, there's a group meeting to make sure we have our plans ready to go and communications ready to go out. But that's a big shift coming our way. Athletics, we're going to a more restrictive learning model, but yet we're still having athletics, and we're back this week to making those things happen. Right, wrong, or otherwise, that's what's happening in schools all over the place, and so we need to be ready. Will we play other schools if those schools are in distance learning? There's a lot of conversation taking place with that. If schools, are there ever going to be schools mandated for distance learning? If they are, will we play them? What if schools choose to have distance learning? Should our students be playing them? Those are the conversations taking place right now. We're moving to this pre-sale tickets idea for our athletic contests. There will be no selling tickets at the gate. They're all pre-sale so that fans can walk in, drop their ticket, and go sit in the stands. Concessions, ticket takers, capacity limits, overall, how do we keep people safe? And I think Tim is going to share especially more information about those safe plans with athletics coming up. I think it's important to mention, at least for our school district and probably others, that when we change learning models, our food service departments, it's challenging on food service. Because for us, we have one food service department that serves a K through 12 school. And if our high school is in hybrid and our elementary is in person, they have to do both. And so we've pulled some paraprofessionals to help pack meals, but there's some challenges there that we're working through right now. Special education students. As we know about special ed kids, transition is hard, even in a normal year. And all of the IEPs in our school district have the 3 models drafted. But again, when you shift models, we have to go student by student to make sure we're meeting our legal requirements there. And I put in there, now is the time to focus back on those relationships. Many of our special ed kids have great relationships with their case managers. Regardless of what's written in that IEP, they're going to lean back on those people to help them and to work their parents through what's taking place. And so we're going back to that relationship discussion. Communication, obviously, we're going to change learning models. Let's get ready to communicate. Trying to stay ahead of the rumor mill, I think, is what we're all doing. Every time that case rate number comes out, new rumors get posted. So we have to make sure we're ahead of that and communicating the message out. So we're trying to do that. And I'll tell you, it's really challenging because, boy, one post on Facebook goes up and everybody thinks it's gospel. So we're trying to stay ahead of it. I had a few staff members reach out to me and say they want more information from the superintendent. And we heard them loud and clear, so our staff members are getting a weekly update directly from the superintendent about what's happening with the discussions with public health, right down to the rumor mill. If they're hearing rumors, I want to know about it, and we're going to address it. And last but not least, we have some things to talk about coming up. Parent-teacher conferences are going to look different than they ever have. Band and choir concerts are going to look different. Halloween's right around the corner. What's our plan? In our district, Halloween, there's a big tradition of our lower elementary kids making the rounds in our local towns to trick or treat. The business owners read books to them. They talk about the importance of academics, and they give them candy. That's not going to happen this year, and it's going to be different. So we need to talk about those things. And of course, the high school league has put out some plans for winter sports. We need to talk about how that affects us and get ready to do those things. So that's the update from East Central.
Dan, before we leave you, Matt Gross had a question for all 3 of you. And I don't believe you had any transmission from student to student or staff to student in school. Is that the case? You haven't had any transmission in school?
We have not had any transmission in school as of yet. As of 12/20 on Friday, there has not been any confirmed cases in our school system.
Very good. And so Dan and Tim, if you'd answer that as well. And so Dan, what's going on in Mora?
Yeah, thank you, Fred, and thanks everyone for joining us. Andy, it's always great to hear your thoughts. Yeah, we've had a couple of cases, but no spread of any cases. I think that was kind of the question. But our current situation in Mora, last week, or this week was our first week going to the hybrid at the elementary, and it's been very important for our elementary teachers to at least experience that. And I went around and talked to quite a few of the elementary teachers, and I was quite pleased to hear that things have been going extremely well for them. Obviously, there's a lot of apprehension when you change and shift from one model to another. I think elementary teachers are worried that some kids are not going to be in front of them every day just because they care so much about their kids. But what I found is that they've been able to personalize the education for the students a lot better. They've also been able to move through lessons a lot quicker because there's not as many students. So those are some of the positives that I'm hearing from our elementary teachers. Our high school has been hybrid since the beginning, and we're trying to do simultaneous learning. And there's a couple different models that high school teachers are using. But one of the things that has been helpful for Mora is just our whole plan. I remember back in, is either July or August when we started these conversations, that we shared our plan, and we had kind of set up our elementary for one time and our high school for another time. So when we had to transition, our transportation was all set up, our food service was ready to go. Although they still have to do some switching and changing, it wasn't that big of an adjustment. So that alignment really paid off for us. So if you're anticipating going from an in-person to a hybrid, you might want to just take a look and play some scenarios out and make sure that when it does change, you won't be changing everything at once. We had quite a situation this week. I can't even remember what day it was. It was either Monday or Tuesday night. I was on my way back from work. It was about 6 o'clock, and I got a call from our district nurse that there was a situation on transportation, and that public health was going to be calling all the families on the bus list, which was about 200. Elementary and high school, and trying to determine close contact for any of those students and drivers on the bus. One of the things we learned is A, we had them spaced out, but B, we didn't necessarily have a seating chart like you would in the classroom. So then trying to determine who was a close contact was out the window, no pun intended. It didn't matter because they were all going to be quarantined if they were on the bus for 30 minutes because we didn't have a seating chart, and we couldn't determine necessarily if they were close contacts. So of course, at 6 o'clock at night, I'm trying to find the guidance on the transportation and the 30-minute rule, which I heard on the commissioner call. So I did put that link in there. It really is some good guidance, and it's more like a pamphlet than it is like a huge document. So along with our county did a public health checklist for contact tracing. I thought that might be helpful. And I just decided that I would make a go home kit folder to put in my my briefcase. So when I got home, if I needed to reference some of those things, I could do it fairly quickly. So thankfully, you can stay on the slide, but thankfully we didn't have 200 students quarantined. It ended up being more like 40. But go ahead, Aaron. I wasn't sure we'd be able to have school the next day, but we did. Well, it was a Tuesday because Wednesday we didn't have school. And so because it was a hybrid model day. So we had a little time on our side. And I think that was lucky by just a stroke of luck. But I want to talk a little bit about social emotional learning. And One of the things that I'm new to Mora, so I don't know a lot about what our plan was last year. And moving forward, I met with our guidance team and our social workers and just had them share what they've done. And I talked about what can we do to support our students and our staff members. And they put together quite a nice plan, K-12. If you want to take a peek at that, it's called Mustang Strong Plan. I think they had started that last year in distance learning. Like Andy, we have all of our elementary students are getting SEL lessons on a regular basis. At our elementary, our specialists are pushed into the classroom to give our teachers a break. And so our social workers are part of that scheduling routine. So they actually go into the classroom and teach those lessons. So I don't know if that's something that's familiar to everyone, but it's worked really well for us. At the high school, we have a advisory hour, and I think that goes to make sure that students are getting connected to one adult in our building. But we do a lot of push in with SEL. There's an example of our guidance counselor had put a virtual office for students. So if they need some support, they can just click onto those things and they can get those resources. Of course, staff, we all need to keep each other in check here, and we all need to try to help support each other throughout the day. And we've been focusing our staff on monthly self-care. I think September was hydrate, October is mindfulness, and November is gratitude. So each month there's a focus that's sent to staff, and we're all committing to helping each other take care of ourselves. And administratively, I guess superintendents, one of the things that sometimes we forget about is ourselves and our administrators. So at our administrative meetings, we each picked one person or randomly chose one person to kind of check in on each other and make sure we're doing okay and connecting with each other, and just trying to practice gratitude within our communities, our schools. And there is a nice little resource I found from MDH called Where's Your Happy Place? I don't know if I stumbled on it or it was sent to me, but it is a good little visual for staff if you want to kind of share that in your weekly updates. And moving forward, we're like Andy, we're having our homecoming activities spread out over 2 weeks because of the hybrid model. So we have 2 weeks of dress-up days, and that's been kind of fun. You can see our seniors were able to do some homecoming activities spaced out and masked and making sure that they were safe. We have our coronation for seniors today out on the football field. And so that's been a change. But we're just really trying to get back to focusing on student achievement. And I think somebody asked, are kids learning in school? And I would say yes. I mean, I know our kids are learning. It's not the same way, but they are learning. And the credit, I believe, goes out to the teachers who really care about their kids and making sure that we recognize that, we see that, and we want to admire our staff. Of course, every situation, again, is trying to communicate with all those different stakeholders and making sure that we do that. Public health has been tremendous here in Kanabec County. And I'm not sure, I can't even imagine trying to contact trace 200 and some people with our staff. So we've been blessed with that. And of course, we're like all the other districts and athletics, we're trying to prepare and plan for events. Our situation is similar to East Central. We're making sure that we're pre-selling tickets, and we're actually making sure that these are the parents that are coming, and they show their ID at the gate and things like that. So, just trying to keep our eye on our teachers, that we're asking them to do things that they've never done before in a short amount of time. So we just need to try to keep making sure that we're giving them enough time and enough breaks and enough support to keep keep them mentally, physically, and emotionally well, because they are working with our kids each and every day. So, and lastly, I just might say, being a new superintendent, I'm trying to figure out all the different funding streams and budgets and things like that. And our enrollment analysis, I'm sure, is like others, it's down, and we're trying to dissect that and figure out how we can connect with all those families that maybe have left us. And then all the staffing situations of, having staff out quarantined, and how do we cover everybody's classroom? I'm not sure if everybody's going through those same things. We've got to make sure that we're trying to staff those and keep our schools open as long as we possibly can. I believe that's it for Maura. Yeah, thank you, Fred.
Well, thank you, Dan. It's a great idea for a go home kit that has all the relevant information just at your fingertips, because it is difficult. There's stuff on the MDH site, which is where that contact information and guidance on buses were. There's stuff on the MDE site. And so that's a great tip. So Tim, what's going on in Bemidji?
Well, thank you, Fred. Quite a bit is happening in Bemidji these days. I have a lot of information to share. Good afternoon, everyone. Tim Lutz, excuse me, Bemidji Area Schools. I want to thank Dan and for their messaging and their information, which has been very valuable this afternoon. I've got quite a bit. The biggest change for us in our current situation in Bemidji is that our numbers in Beltrami County are skyrocketing. We are still seeing the repercussions of the Labor Day weekend and the Trump political rally, which occurred 2 weeks ago today. And right now in Bemidji, we are all in the elementary schools and the hybrid in our secondary schools. But we are seeing now that our current number of cases over just around 45,000 people in the county is at 137, which makes our current 14-day case rate as of this morning 30.59, and that's changed from 16.5 last week. So it's almost doubled in the course of a week. I don't have a prediction other than it's going to be close to 40 is what I'm hearing from county health officials next week at this time. The good news is there are no new cases in our schools. Last week, I was telling you about 4 or 5 cases where we had to do contact tracing. Despite the increase by almost double in the county, we have not had to do any contact tracing at all in any of our schools this week. So it's really remarkable to point out again that what we're doing seems to be working. No community spread within our buildings. We do have 25 staff members amongst our 900 staff members who are currently in quarantine for either having cases that were positive or, for the most part, being close contacts. So they're quarantining, and about 50 students, most of whom were close contacts. Our distance learning school within a school is growing rapidly. We're now at 913 students, mostly because people are getting more and more nervous about these county numbers. And we just finished 3 days of free local testing, and so we're really taking a look at what that may mean for us in this area. On the next slide, I want to talk about a little bit the fact that we met as a team with the rapid response team of MDE and MDH yesterday. And we also included Kellier School and Black Duck School, which are in Beltrami County. And we were advised, and this is something we already knew, but it was nice to hear it again, that we need to look at multiple data points in a situation, whether we're talking test results for MCAs or NWEAs or COVID. And so these are some of those multiple points that we were looking at. That first of all, yes, our county numbers are high, but the rolling day average from the MDH is still only just over 10. So we are in the model we should be in right now. Now, granted, those numbers are 2 weeks behind our local county numbers, but those numbers are behind so that they can clean up the data, check out zip codes and other information that might be incorrect. So that's, we don't have to look at either one of those in isolation. We look at both of those together. We're also looking at age demographics where COVID is hitting. We're looking at community spread, which it is. We're looking at the recent testing events and our situation in our schools. We were assured yesterday by the rapid response team that what we're doing to keep our schools safe is working. We are maintaining health and safety in our schools. And as we look at the state of the county and its COVID numbers, we are looking at those other factors. Well, what we know that at this time, the recent increases for the most part are largely affecting young adult groups, college ages, and in the 20s. That age group, this young adult group represents a very small percentage of our staff and none of our student population. So the relative impact of the rising numbers in Beltrami County has a proportionately lower impact on our schools. When these positive cases were reported in our schools last week, and again, they weren't community spread, I believe we did a good and a prompt job of contact tracing, and we eliminated any further contact or community spread of the disease. And of course, those recent events in our area are really affecting what we're doing in those numbers, but they don't necessarily affect what's happening in our schools. The rise in cases in the county does not result in a rise of cases within our schools. And I'm going to be sending out a little communique to all of our staff members today and our parents, letting them know just what I shared with you, that we're doing well, it is working. I'm also going to be sending that communique as a bit of a heads up that the storm is coming and that we will likely be going to distance learning if the trend continues within the next couple of weeks. It's kind of hard to balance a sense of calm with a sense of concern. The message I want to get across is that we are watching the numbers closely and we're giving those numbers careful consideration. But with those numbers and all other factors, we'll have all of those guide us to a conclusion that if there's a need for change in the next week or two to a more restrictive model. And that, again, what we're doing is working. On the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about ways that we're supporting students and staff in spite of and in the midst of all of these challenges and stressors. We're working with our Northwest Service Co-op, and I know that Dr. Bruce Jensen is often on these calls. And this is a program that he has shared and his team has shared with school districts in Northwestern Minnesota, the Refuel Your Life Cognitive Behavioral Support Program, which is something that is available for staff members and their children. And it's basically an opportunity to really look at certain stressors and to enroll in the program and to answer a questionnaire that will then score measures of stress and worry and anxiety, depression, insomnia, substance abuse, those kinds of things. I actually went in and found that, I could probably use a little help and advice with some sleep problems. I wake up at 3 in the morning and it's hard to get back to sleep because my brain is rapid firing through all the things I need to do the next day. We're also working with the Service Co-op to roll out mental health program support through the Southwest Service Co-op for our staff members. In our schools, we offer SEL supports and training for all of our elementary grade level students up to grade 5. From that point on, and within the elementaries as well, we have responsive classroom programming, and we are a PBIS school in a couple of our sites. So those are all good programs that promote positivity and supports for students and their families. We also are working with our Beltrami Area Service Collaborative for some mental health supports for students in our buildings, and we're working on a Sanford Health mental health grant for our students. And then we also have something that's really working well, and it's a wonderful program called Virtual Calming Rooms. And on the next slide, you can get a sense for what the front page looks like, and also our link to the calming rooms. And these are basically meditative relaxation types of experiences for students of all different sorts. And there are several different criteria at several different age groups. And here's one example, is visual relaxation. So if you were to click on, in the top row there, that second icon of the fireplace, you would have over an hour of music and the fireplace burning down. You can see that on Netflix too if you want, but this is a nice relaxing scenario. Same with the campfire on the beach. The next one, if you can back up for a second, Aaron, I was going to say the next icon is actually a very cool walk through the forest. You drive up to a little path, and then for the next hour, you're going through a walk in the forest on a pathway, a trail, which is really relaxing. It's a cool experience for people. The next slide shows 5 more criteria or areas where this virtual experience can provide social, emotional, mental supports. There's music from Bemidji musicians that people can log into and listen. There are puzzles and games, arts and crafts, journaling for the middle and high school students, and some guided meditation experiences. So these are all programs that are being promoted, and students and parents are enjoying these in our district. In the next slide, I want to touch just a little bit on some of our safety plans in our sports and activities. Of course, for our outdoor sports, we are allowing up to the 250 limit that the high school league is recommending, and the guidance is supporting 150 home and 100 visitors. And this seems to be working well. If things start getting out of hand, we're going to move to what's called a wristband plan, where we hand out wristbands to families and to visitors so that only those people can get in and we can keep track of numbers. No fans for indoor volleyball games right now, no concessions. Pep band can play, but then they have to leave. They can't be counted if we want. They would include that 250, so we need to ask them to leave. Dance team can perform at halftime, but then they have to leave. And we're supporting and encouraging people to watch streaming and radio play-by-play, no tailgating. So those are some of the high points for us when it comes to our sports and safety plans. What's coming up now in Bemidji, we're going to continue to be consulting with public health, with the school board, with our district advisory council for COVID and the regional team to get further guidance and to take a look at a potential model change coming up down the road. We're hoping maybe 2 weeks. MEA break might be the time we'll have to make the shift. We're going to continue working with activities. If activities may be able to continue, who knows? If we go to a distance learning plan, we will have to eliminate those temporarily. Communications are so important, and that communique I was telling you about earlier is one of the big first steps, talking about the various data points and our recent successes of not spreading the disease and of our potential plans coming up. We're getting a handle on our enrollment numbers. We're very close to where we were expecting to be. Encouraging news that our open enrollment numbers are actually improving. Generally, we lose about a net 80, 79 or 80, which is what we lost last year. We're up 39. We're actually curtailing some open enrollments out and seeing more kids coming in, and that's encouraging. So it tells me, again, that what we're doing is working and that people have confidence in us. And in the midst of all this, we're continuing our referendum efforts for an operating levy, and that will require more communication. That's just the second crisis that we're dealing with in Bemidji. So lots happening in Bemidji, and I'm sure I'll share quite a bit more next week. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Tim. You're seeing there what Chris Iserman has been talking about. The growth of cases in the state are due to gatherings, whether they're funerals or weddings, especially if they're indoor gatherings. And you certainly had a gathering there at the airport last week. Also, Tim, if you'd look at the chat window, there's a question. If we can get to it today, we'll come to it at the end. If not, I think we'll talk about that next week. But if you take a look at that. Well, Jeremy Kovash sends his regrets. The Fridays are turning out to be one of his busiest days because the COVID county numbers come out on Thursday. He just texted me to say he's been in numerous Zoom meetings with the response coordinator as they're talking to school after school that's had increase in cases. And so he's doing his work. And it just shows you that the case numbers are changing and moving up in many communities, and he's been very busy. So Neil, what can you tell us from the university?
Well, I'll comment on our case rate before we go into the outdoor piece. We're seeing a lot of increase in our student, and then I talked previously with another individual saying, looks like the staff are doing pretty good, and now our staff numbers are also increasing. What we've seen, at least from my perception, is a lot of the problems that are occurring with interactions that are occurring outside the university environment. In other words, to be socializing out with, outside or whatever, but not necessarily transmission based on activities that are occurring in the classroom. And that's something for people to think about as they're working on their school districts, is if they're not seeing a lot of transmission at school, but there's a lot of things going on in the community, maybe the environment that's at school might be safer than the environment that's away from school. And that would affect you as far as thinking through the thought process of whether to maybe go to a hybrid model, particularly for elementary, or if the elementary school is in fact, with all the controls in place, a safer place than to have them out in the community. Just something to discuss. We may focus on that on the next meeting. Outdoor adventures. So one of the things that we've been doing, I've been promoting with the university, and particularly people in health services and everything else, is wearing a mask all day is really, really taxing, and it wears people down. And if you get a chance to step outside just briefly, it helps to recharge people's batteries. And it's also a lot safer being outside than inside. It's approximately 20 times safer interacting or being outside than it is being inside. Couple things just to think about: making sure you have good shoes, bug spray, sunscreen, although we're not seeing as much sun lately. And of course, check for ticks, because it would be terrible to avoid COVID and then pick up Lyme disease. Dress for the season and comfortable shoes with good tread. Really solid data that if you can stay outside, see a lot of green, it's really good for the mental health, and walking is incredibly good for mental health. It's some nice data is that it's about as good as some really high-end antidepressant medication. Next. This is something that we've been doing some preliminary research on with using other devices, and now this is available from Wisconsin. This is a modification to the standard face shield, where you have a face shield and then there's a kind of a bib that comes out underneath, and it can be cinched up fairly tight. In fact, it's tight enough so that if you have a external pump with some filtration on it, you can positively pressurize this this device so that you're in complete comfort and you have airflow in it. We had to do this for an individual who's teaching French and in person. And so he's got this, what he's wearing, the students are able to see him talk, they can hear him, and he can also hear them, and they can see his lips move so he can form the words appropriately. I think this might be a way of going forward for some individuals that need to do that kind of interaction with their students. It's also a very comfortable unit, and we'll be doing more research at the U on this particular device and similar ones coming up very shortly. I think that's probably it. Yep.
Thank you, Neil. That a few weeks ago, we had a link where you could get those Badger shields, and maybe Aaron, we can find that link and put it out for everyone. They are readily available, I understand. Todd, again, another rich set of information from the superintendents and Neil. What can you make sense of this and give us advice for from the communication end?
Well, every time I listen to these three, I'm so impressed with the thinking that's going into the communications and how they're continuing to try to expand the information that they send out, and they make sure they hit every critical stakeholder as much as possible. I've really kind of pulled two pretty major things and one kind of small thing away from this. The first is that I keep hearing superintendents come back to really three things of qualities about their communication that are really the thread among all of them. Number one is precision. That means get the right information out the first time. Second is transparency. That is, don't hold back. Open the doors and show your community what's going on and make sure that they get all of the information. And the third thing is the frequency. And that is that you need to continue to deliver the messaging. Even when you think the community has got it, remember, people have lives going on, they've got other distractions happening, and they need to keep seeing the important information. I think about the phrase quarantine, and when you have to start to use that, how important it is to explain to the community what that is and what that isn't, and how that's different than other actions that the district may take. The second thing I really took away from this discussion was the critical nature of sharing the social, emotional, and mental health resources that are available in your school district. I mean, you're getting new audiences exposed to those kinds of services. And I can just tell you, I'm the parent of 5. At times it's a lack of awareness, or at times it's just a hesitation. But it may be that families don't understand always that they either need or that they can take advantage of these resources in the school districts. And I like seeing how each of these 3 districts have prioritized this and made sure that the message has gotten out to their community members of the availability of these resources. It's going to help, and it's particularly going to help when it gets a bit colder, and maybe we can't take Neil's advice and get outside as much as we used to. We're stuck inside, and so we're going to need all the support we can get. And then a third thing, maybe not as mission critical as some of the other things we talk about, but a good little hint. And that is that as you begin to see more activities occurring at the schools, and for those of you who will have football and volleyball, you're not going to have many fans who are able to attend those. So you've probably taken the effort to make sure that a local radio station or perhaps streaming online is available for those fans who want to watch the kids play. That's a great opportunity for an important captive audience to be communicated with. Tim and I have talked about it in terms of his local referendum, finding a way to communicate with people then. But for all of you, communicating during events about the pandemic, about what the district is going through, whether it's a flyer or a public service announcement message, what have you, you know that nearly everybody who's listening to a sporting event has some connection with the schools. And so that becomes a great opportunity to communicate with them. Now, Fred, it looks like we've got a few questions there, so maybe we should go to those before the hour's over.
Correct. And one of them to everyone is, and this is from Lyndon down in Worthington, have you considered what would happen for your food service if you ended up with a positive case in food service, had to quarantine your food service? Do you have a backup? Have you done any thinking about this?
Fred, I can answer that one from Bemidji's perspective. The guidance from the MDE, the food service program down there, is that we do have a continuity of operations plan, that we do have a plan in place where there are alternate people who can step in, that we do some cross-training of all of the cooks in that school so they can step in and cover each other's duties, as well as to provide training for other people in the community, some of the substitute cooks, in case they have to step in. My wife is a registered dietitian, and she works as a consultant for the Northwest Service Co-op, and that's been her messaging for the schools that she works with, that we have that plan in place and that cross-training, and she's even offered to step in the event that they get down to their last standing cook. So that's really important, and the same is true with bus drivers. We need to have subs standing by and people ready to go in the event of a shortage due to illness.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Andy or Dan?
Well, I know that for bus drivers, you know, if we didn't have a couple people that could step in and step up, we would have been in a world of hurt. So I know it's hard enough to get drivers the way it is, but we were grateful to have some backup drivers that we could get ready to roll the next school day.
I would say that my answer is very similar to those two, so I won't reiterate, but what I will say is that we've had other organizations reach out to us, like our local hospital, with the same question. What if their food service department had to quarantine? Could the school district help them? And the answer is yes. So there's probably some conversations to have between organizations too. If you do end up with a food service department being down, maybe there is a local hospital or nursing home or whatever it might be that could help serve meals.
Okay, that's great advice. Looking at a question here from Matt Gross again. Any recommendations for communicating what might be a complicated or controversial decision to stay in a model when the data changes? I think Andy, you were facing that situation, aren't you, with the case rate above 40 and still in person in the elementary?
Yeah, and so the approach we've taken there is to try to have a united message. So when it comes to public health, I keep telling people, when they're nervous, then we're nervous. So if public health is going to have nerves about what we're doing, then it's going to be a problem, right? So can we have a united message from public health? All of the school districts in the county made learning model changes this week, some with varying degrees of restriction. But the reality is the message was the same. We're all looking at the same case rate number, but can we defend our decisions similarly? So when we remove the FCI numbers, why are we doing that? Or the prison numbers, we call it FCI, but the prison numbers, why are we doing that? And it isn't that one district's doing it different than the other. It's we're all doing it the same and looking at it similarly.
Yeah, I might add that, sorry, Todd.
Oh, go ahead.
I might add that we had Kanabec County Public Health write a letter explaining kind of that process of changing models. So we presented that with our parents up front because we had to switch so quickly. But if anybody wants to take a peek at that, I can sure get it out.
And I would just add to this that you think about your communities, you're going to have some people who are leaning pretty strongly on the side of the public health concern and some leaning on the side of the get the kids into school and keep them there. And so this advice about being with one message along with public health is critical. I would add to that to make sure this is an issue that your school board has had the opportunity to talk through with you completely so that they're defending the decision also, because I can't think of anything that would be maybe more difficult or cause this conversation to be extended than if you had board members who did not understand why you made this decision going forward.
Very, very good. I'm glad to see people are using the questions. I think we'll save the question on the safety of in-person versus hybrid for next week, because I know that there was quite a bit of discussion in many of these districts about it. Now we've got a month of experience under our belts to respond to that. Aaron tells me that the resource about the Badger shield is in the end of the PowerPoint here. So when that gets posted this afternoon, you can grab that for the Badger face shield. Again, another great set of conversations and information. So Jeff, you want to wrap it up for us?
Sure, Fred. Again, thanks to all the panelists for being a part of this again today. I just, one little, I'll leave you with one thought as a superintendent out there. If you are to get COVID, what is your backup plan? What's your district's backup plan? And we do know that there's been 3 superintendents, at least in the state of Minnesota, that have tested positive for COVID. And so, it can happen. And again, just to make sure you're thinking and being prepared for your exit if you needed to be as well. So with that, I want to thank everyone and look forward to the conversations next week. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you.